Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Hannah and let's talk books. So long time no see. It has definitely been over 2 months, I think it is, since I filmed anything. But for February and March, both my husband and I were sick for like a majority of those months. We got really bad colds, I lost my voice, and I had a cough that just would not go away. I actually only just realized it went away a few days ago. So finally filming again, bit chaotic there. And so this is just a combination of February and March reads. And since I was sick and I had other stuff going on, I really didn't read much. I really have not been reading much. I think I'm in a bit of a reading slump. I don't know, like every time I look at a book, like I have books I want to read, but every time I look at them, my brain just goes, nope. So yeah, hopefully this month I'll try and get through that a bit. But let's jump right into this with a book that I actually finished on the last day of January, but that was the day that I filmed my other wrap up, so it didn't make it into that one. And that is How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. This did just come out, and it is a horror thriller mystery, and I only gave it 3 stars. I did do a reading vlog on this, so if you want more in-depth thoughts, I'll pop that up there. But since I had pre-ordered this book literally a year in advance, I really went into this not knowing much of anything about it. I didn't reread the description or anything, so I didn't realize this was about puppets. But unfortunately, this book was 100 pages too long. Like, I hit a spot that would have been the perfect ending, but then it kept going and essentially just repeated itself. And it also took 100 pages to really do anything. So this did just end up being an average read for me. I didn't enjoy it as much as some other Grady Hendrix that I've read. But especially with that beginning, I was just struggling to care, especially with the brother character, as he's so unlikable. But I mean, that is on purpose. There was one brutal scene in here, which I definitely expect in a Grady Hendrix book, like with my best friend's exorcism. I love when he adds brutal stuff in the midst of this more like comedic atmosphere kind of thing. But that only happened once for me here, and it just didn't have the same impact. I wasn't interested in like the family aspect of the book or anything like that. And I think with campy horror, there's kind of like a fine line there, because this felt both too serious and too ridiculous at the same time. And so I think this one just didn't really hit that mark for me. And the only thing I really took away from this book is the phrase "cockaway." Next, I read The Complete Mouse, a survival's tale by Art Spiegelman. This is a non-fiction graphic novel. It originally came out in 1980, and I gave this 4 stars. This is one of the books that the US is like banning everywhere, and it is just completely ridiculous. I don't understand why. Like, it's literally a memoir of someone's life. Like, how can you ban that? But I actually did not know this was a memoir going in, and I thought the way this is set up was actually a good way to do it, because the story is shared as the father telling it to the son. And so it does like kind of break the fourth wall, even though all the characters are like mice and other animals and everything. They represent real people and real scenarios that happened. And it's literally the son being like, hey, I need to write more of like my comic, so I need to talk to you more about this event. Can you tell me more about it? And then we kind of go into that scene. And I feel like that definitely made it feel more human and personal. And reading the reviews, one thing that I noticed doesn't really get brought up a lot is actually the dad in this book, the one that went through all of this. No one ever really talks about how it really goes even deeper into how this whole experience affected the dad. Like, there's everyday scenarios where you're like, oh wow, that's why he's like this kind of thing. Like, we see over and over that he can't throw things away. There's a scene where he tries to exchange like half-eaten food at a grocery store. So there's like moments like that where he's obviously difficult to live with and does things in a non-traditional way. And he also has some very racist views of his own. And so you can definitely see how he's a product of the trauma he went through. And with that, I also think it's a perfect example of how imperfect the human race is. Then I read The Trees Grew Because I Bled There, Collected Stories by Eric LaRocca. This was an e-arc. This is horror short stories. It originally came out in 2021, but March 7th of this year, this new edition with this new title came out. It was originally published under the title The Strange Things We Become in Other Dark Tales, and I ended up giving this 3.5 stars. There are 8 stories in here, and I don't really remember many of them off the top of my head, but the collection is very cohesive, and there aren't a lot of characters in most of the stories, so it's like very personal and very much about like the bonds with the people around us kind of thing. We go through a huge range of emotions in these stories, and nothing is straightforward, and humans are just very complicated and complex, and all of that is explored here. I think the beginning stories were some of my favorites. I did only have one 5-star out of here, but did have quite a few 4 stars. Next, I read My Year of Relaxation by Otessa, and I thought I was gonna look up how to pronounce this. Oh gosh, Mosfige? I'm not sure on that. This is contemporary / literary fiction. This came out in 2018, and I only gave this 2 stars. I read this for the local book club I'm in, and it's one of those books where there really isn't much of a plot. Essentially, we follow this rich woman who has depression, and she decides she's just gonna hibernate in her apartment for a year, and she finds a psychiatrist, is that what you call them, who will give her basically any medication she wants, and so she kind of self-medicates to keep herself sleeping, and just in kind of this state where she's not really aware of what's happening on the outside world kind of deal. And so essentially we just follow her through that, and then the book just kind of ends. So I think what you get out of it is more how much you can relate to this character, but since she's like rich, doesn't have to work, has all of her needs met, and just being able to sleep for like a literal year, she's not exactly a likable character kind of thing. But some people say the depiction of depression is very accurate. As someone who has had depression, I'm about it. But I would definitely only recommend picking this up if you are okay with having an essentially plotless book. Like for example, the book Woman Eating is one that I would kind of compare this to, although I did enjoy Woman Eating. So I mean, these are very, very hit or miss books for people. Then I read Pigtails, a novel of lust and transformation by Marie Darrieussecq. I believe that's how they pronounced her name at the event. This is French magical realism, so this was originally published in French. This came out in 1996, so a bit of an older book, and I also only gave this 2 stars. So I read this in preparation for an event at the bookstore, almost forgot that word, Shakespeare and Company here. I have a friend that had this book, and so I borrowed it from her, and basically I just read all of it the night before the event because this is a novella. And pretty much we follow this main character where she gets involved in the oldest profession there is, and she slowly kind of turns into a pig, but like her transformation kind of flip-flops. Like sometimes she's normal, sometimes she has more piggish like features kind of thing. And so that's where the magical realism part comes in. And this one was odd. I was hoping to get more clarification of some things from the author because she was answering a bunch of like audience questions and stuff. But she's a bit of a character, and I feel like this book kind of got popular by accident. It was just one of those like right place, right time kind of things. Because someone pointed out something that's very obvious to like any reader of this book, but the author is like, oh, I've never thought of that before. I never realized that. And it's just kind of like, how did you never realize that about your own book? So yeah, it was not the best event and not the best book. Then I read The Oil Man by Kevin Hendrick. This is a horror that just came out in January, and I gave it 1 star. So this is a book that I just found on the new shelf at my library. There's even a stamp in it that says like the author gave it to the library. So this is just someone like self-publishing kind of thing. And so it makes me really sad to give it 1 star, but it is not good, I'm sorry to say. Basically, the plot is about this woman from the Midwest who moves to Paris, gets a job working for this couple that shares the same apartment building as her, like they're like neighbors kind of thing, and there is a mass murderer, there's a serial killer on the loose in Paris at the same time, known as the Oil Man. However, this feels like a novella that was just written in 1 sitting and immediately published. There are an insane amount of misspellings, missing letters, missing commas, very oddly worded sentences. And like there's one instance where they say like the name of a winery and it's in French and it's completely missing the last word. And so then they say the translation in English, and I'm just like, yeah, glad there's the translation because the whole thing is not there in French. But because of this, there were some scenes that were a bit confusing. I'm actually going to read one sentence from this book. Like this is just 1 sentence. It says, "Personally, I did not care. I didn't go back for him, of course, because despite Laurent's pain, now he was spiritually suffering a different type of pain. This I knew." And yeah, that is just odd sentences like that just completely interrupt the flow of the story. And I also really just didn't find the story itself interesting at all. They all just felt like characters that were stereotypes, and they did not talk or act in believable ways. But the way the MC could just walk into places and just speak English to everybody is not realistic at all. Like, when you enter a place, you always speak French first. It really just felt like someone's view of Paris that had not been to Paris before. And like, the way this chick gets a job makes no sense. This would not happen in real life, like, at all, especially with her neighbors, was just not believable in any way. And this really could have taken place in any city, because it being in Paris really meant nothing just for it to say it's in Paris kind of thing. And I definitely understand like how difficult self-publishing is, but this book definitely needed a lot more work until it was put into the hands of readers. Then I attempted to read Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Su Lin Tan. This is a YA fantasy that just came out last year. I DNF'd this after 100 pages. I know it's YA, and I have a love-hate relationship with that genre now, but with all the hype around it and so many people that I follow giving it 5 stars, I really thought I would enjoy it. But it really just felt like any other YA fantasy out there. And nothing happened. Nothing happens in the first 100 pages. And like, I could see where some of it was going. And there's supposed to be like some love triangle at some point. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm not into this right now. I want to like it, so I might pick it up again at some other point, but just not right now. And finally, I read A Man Among Ghosts by Stephen Hopstickin. Not sure if that's how you say his name. This is a horror paranormal. Comes out this year. I think it just came out this month, actually. Or not this month, end of March. And this was an e-arc. And I gave this 3 stars. However, it was a 4-star story until like the 60% mark. And then it felt like the guy was just in a time crunch and just had to hurry through the ending and get it like out in time kind of thing, because the vibe and like the writing style itself feels different in that last third. But essentially we're following this guy that buys this old decrepit house. He's gonna renovate it and everything kind of thing. And he gets it for cheap because like someone died in the house, blah, blah, blah. Well, he immediately starts seeing ghosts like everywhere, in the house, at his work, on the street. He really can't tell what is reality and what isn't anymore. And that whole first 60% and like what he goes through, what's happening is very interesting. I enjoyed all the side characters. Like, usually in a horror, the person is not believed. They're not really supported. And that's the complete opposite in this book. He has friends and neighbors that believe him, like he's able to talk to people about what he's seeing. And so he has these people that are backing him up, and he has this support system. And I felt like that was actually really refreshing to see in a horror, to see that the guy isn't alone kind of thing. But then it just flips, and there were some scenes where I'm like, no, this is a dream sequence, right? It has to be, but no, like that's what happened. And I'm just like, I don't know how I feel about that. And I'm okay with how it ended, but I definitely think that last third could be rewritten and done in a better way. But it is an easy and quick read, and if you're in the mood for ghosts, I would recommend this one. And that's everything I've read the past 2 months. Usually that would be like a month of stuff, but yeah, just hasn't been the same lately. But as always, thank you for hanging out with me. It is greatly appreciated. And until next time, bonne journée and au revoir.